All right, guys, welcome to our Friday night wealth creation course. Thank you for tuning in. My name's Jerry. If you've not joined us before, we do a free course every single Friday. And the reason I teach this course is I want to spread financial education. I want financially educated people making more financially educated decisions. Because if you think about, and this is my story, when I grew up, I wasn't financially educated. My family wasn't. No one in my mom, dad, siblings, grandparents ever really had money down and mastered. So I remember seeing, like, when I was a little kid, watching, my parents fight about money, get in arguments. They got divorced. We had our house foreclosed on, vehicles repoed, the whole 9 yards, right? And so one of the things that I always struggled with was money. I was like, man, I don't know if I hate this thing because how much pain and bad memories it caused, or the opposite. If I don't figure out how to get it, the rest of my life's going to be really hard. Right. So I'm kind of at this point, a mix between, like, I started out with money the Dave Ramsey way, right? Buy everything with cash, never have debt, budget your hardest, do all that. Went all the way over to the Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki. And so what I want to do is I want to share with you my philosophy, my viewpoint on when I should buy a house. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and disclose, I don't currently own a house. And I'm going to share with you why tonight. We're actually going to go through my numbers, and I'm going to share with you why I still rent, when I would look at buying a house, what the optimum circumstances are, the right way to do it, and also the wrong way to do it. Because a lot of people do it the wrong way. Not many people actually do this the right way. And so when you think about buying a home, when I think about buying a home, there's a lot of emotion that goes into it. Right? It's kind of like establishing my family, and it's a security thing, and it's a safety thing. And again, when we've talked previously, emotions and money don't mix. Right? We talked a couple weeks ago about debt, and these are still in line with, like, the mistakes people make. Right? They make these, resolutions. I've made these goals before, and like the last couple of weeks, should I pay off my debt? Should I put money in the 401k? Should I work with a financial advisor? We're going to continue this with, should I buy a home? When should I do that? Right? And again, it's not an emotional decision. It's mathematical. When I buy a home, one of my buddies here, client Jeremy, he works with a lender. The bank, for them, it's not really an emotional decision, right? It's just math. And so as a consumer, I've got to make the same decision, right? In a negotiation, or in a business transaction, or in an investment, or whatever it might be, if one party is logical and the other party is emotional, Mike, which party will win 100% of the time in that? Logical will always beat emotional. If you look at just even on a truth in lending statement, you see how much money the bank made on the home and how much money I made on the home. The bank made the money, right? Now, I want to jump into this. Now, we're going to start out without the emotions. We're going to go into just facts. Okay, what are the facts and circumstances about buying a house? What is true? We're not reading into any of this. And I have a lot of Grant Cardone followers. Love Grant. This is not just me ranting saying you're an idiot if you bought a house. There is a right way to do this, right? So this isn't going to be just a bunch of statements I can't back up. We are only going to look at what's provable and what's true. None of my own viewpoints, none of my own opinions, nothing that I've just whipped out my butt because it sounds cool. It's going to be the facts. So here's a fact. Until I pay off that home, it's not mine. So when I think I own the home, I've still got to make payments. I'm not free and clear on it yet. That's a fact. I have to be thinking that way. That's a fact. It doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it is. I owe money, right? We've talked about the borrower factually is slave to the lender. So if I have a mortgage, I do need to pay the mortgage. It's not mine until I've paid that thing off, right? Another fact. So with a home, right? My bank is the one that's going to own that. With the rental, my landlord is going to own it. Who's heard like if you're renting, you're throwing your money away to a landlord? Like, either way, my point with this, either way, factually, my money is going to somebody that's not me. Okay, my money is going to somebody that's not me. It doesn't matter whether it was a bank. It doesn't matter whether it was a landlord. It's not me. It's going somewhere else. If I use that money and give it to someone else, guess what? I didn't keep it, which means it's not invested. It's not multiplying for me. Right? So I need to look at that. Either way, my money is going to somewhere else. So we can't be emotional like, oh, I'm losing. Either way, it's going to go to somewhere else. In a home, I do have more control than I have in a rental. That's a fact. That is a fact. There's more control with a home than a rental. In a rental, if I'm in an apartment, right? I have neighbors. There's different regulations on quiet time and noise. I may or may not be allowed to have pets. I may or may not be allowed to update things or paint or put holes in the walls or do whatever, right? But if I have a home, I can do whatever I want to. I can, as long as it's, within like, some HOAs and different things are different, right? But if it's a normal home, I can update it. I can paint it. I can have pets. I can have kids. I can do whatever I would like to do with it as long as I actually own it, right? So I have more control. That is a fact. I also have more liability. Okay, liability means risk. I have more risk as a homeowner than I do as a renter. Right? So that's something that I'm going to talk about tonight. I have more liability. If something breaks in my rental right now that I rent from my landlord, if something breaks, I don't fix it. He does. Is that backwards?
Liability in a rental than a home.
Flip that. Good catch. I have more liability in a home than I do in a rental. Okay, good catch, Jeremy. So if I own a home, I have more liability, is what we're saying here. I have to fix my own stuff. If the utilities go up, if the bills go up, something breaks, we have an earthquake, I have to fix my own stuff. Right? In a rental, I don't. So that's factual. Another fact, a home does cost me more money to get into. Right? A down payment, I've got closing costs, I've got different things associated with the purchase. On a rental, usually first and last month's rent, that's it. Right? So that's another fact. And none of this stuff is right or wrong. It just is. Right? And my personal financial situation is going to dictate whether it's right or wrong for me. So for me to stand up here and say, always buy a home, you're an idiot if you don't, that's dumb. For me to stand up here and say, never buy a home, you're an idiot if you do, that's also dumb. I don't know anything about your facts and circumstances. Okay, I can be Dave Ramsey saying, buy, own a home, own a home. Well, I've never sat down with you and looked at what you have. In my opinion, it's really not even ethical for me to tell you that. I don't know what you have. It might be a great idea for you to do. But I could also be Grant Cardone and be like, never buy a home. You're dumb if you do. I also don't think that's right. I don't think that's ethical. I don't know what you have. Grant's not going to sit down with you and do the numbers with you, right? You've got to do that for yourself. I've got to do that for myself. So a home costs more money to get into. A home factually could also appreciate in value. My rental can't. I don't even get my deposit first and last month's rent. That doesn't even at least go in a money market so that when I give or get that back, if I get it back, it grew a little bit, right? So if I buy a home, it could appreciate, but a home can also lose value. Talk to a client today. He's buying real estate in Detroit right now, right? So he's buying it. He's like, yeah, it pretty much went as far down as it possibly ever could go. So he's buying it now because he knows it really only could go up from here. But that's an example. A home can go down in value. I've got to be okay with that as well. A home can have unforeseen expenses that I am responsible for paying. This is a big one we're going to talk about tonight. Lastly, a rental can increase my cost each year. Mike, you're a landlord. You raise rent every year, every 2 years, right? Every so often, your landlord, my landlord does this, rent goes up, right? So that's also something that I've got to face. If I rent, my costs will continually go up. In my home, my monthly mortgage probably won't go up, but I might have variable costs, things that break, maintenance, repairs, things that I'm responsible for, right? So these are really the facts, okay? A home is owned by the bank until I pay it off. A rental is owned by the landlord till I move out. I have more control of a home than I have in a rental. I have more liability in a home than I have in a rental. A home costs me more money to get into than a rental. A home can appreciate. Home can also lose value. A home can have unforeseen expenses, and then a rental, my increasing costs can happen with my rent. Again, none of these are right or wrong. It's just the truth. And I want to establish the truth so that we can start to make some calculated decisions off of what's real. So the next thing I'm looking at here, guys, I'm looking at what are the myths. We looked at what's true. We have to look at what's the data that's not necessarily true. Okay, and it doesn't mean it's always not true. It just means that it's not always correct. Okay, I've learned in life that absolutes are almost always unachievable. It's always going to be something in the middle. You've got to look at what's the best case scenario. So who's heard the myth, always buy a home? Right? I've heard that. That's kind of middle class, like the realtor really wants you to, the mortgage guy really wants you to, your parents really want you, your buddies really want you to. Everyone says buy a home, it's a good idea. There's no always with this. We're going to look at when should you buy a home. Okay. We're also looking at never buy a home. This one, not many people say. There's this very specific party, a group of people that will say never buy a home. Okay. And what's funny, the guy that really gets behind this does own his condo. He doesn't rent his condo. He owns his condo. So it's also never buy a home. That's not absolute. That's not achievable. There are circumstances where that can make sense. There's the myth that a home is an investment. Usually I'm hearing this from a realtor. Okay. I saw a realtor the other day post that home ownership is the American dream. Since when? Everyone I talk to hates their job and wants to be financially free. Financial freedom is the American dream. Okay. A home is not the American dream. It's also not an investment, and it's also not an asset. Okay. And when we talk about asset investment, we did a course about this probably a couple months ago. So I work in the private equity industry, meaning I work with a lot of real estate funds. And in order to be in a private equity investment, I would have to have $1 million net worth. And that's regulated by the Securities Exchange Commission, federal government, right? The federal government, when I go to qualify to invest in those deals, does not let me count my home as part of my assets. So again, this is not Jerry's opinion. I'm telling you, literally, the government doesn't let you count your home as an asset. I live there. It's not an asset. It costs me money every month. The other myth is that renting is throwing money away. Okay, at the end of the day, like that's kind of more just a marketing ploy. We're going to throw money away either way. Just you're either giving it to a bank or to a landlord. Like it's not yours. It's a housing cost. So we really have to kind of level this. And I want you to think about this as like financing a vehicle versus leasing a vehicle, financing a home versus leasing a home. I don't look at, I paid a car off, that's a good thing. I look at just what's my net cost out of pocket? What are the tax benefits involved? I'm going to get rid of it when I don't want it again anyways, which we all know probably happens with the home. What do you think, every 7 years, Jeremy? 7 to 10 years? So you guys already kind of lease your homes, right? You get rid of it every 7 to 10 years and get another one. So we don't look at like pay downs and it's a cost. This is what it costs me per month to live. Okay, so which cost makes the most sense for me right now? Which risks and liabilities make the most sense for me right now? The other myth is that I should buy what I qualify for. I've seen people get killed financially. They just go in and they're like, I can get this. So they go tell the realtor. Well, guess what? The realtor makes more commission when you can get more of this. So they're not going to tell you slow down, that's too much. They're not going to really sit down and budget for you. They're just going to say, great, you got approved for 400. Let's go look at houses in the 400 range. And they're going to find one that you feel emotionally attached to and show you all the great things, skim through the numbers and disclosures and have you sign up, right? I shouldn't be looking at what do I qualify for. I should be looking at what's the right financial decision for me. What's the right move for my finances? It's not even a budget decision. I look at this as an investment decision because I'm taking my capital and putting into something. Not saying the home is the investment. I'm saying I'm deploying capital. Whenever I deploy capital, I'm understanding what is this going to cause for me financially and what's the return on that capital that I've just spent, whether that be a down payment or a security deposit, right? Now, the other myth here is that I should put as little money down on my purchase as possible. This one, I don't know about the other states. This one is super popular in Alaska. FHA, VA, 0% down, 3% down. And what I'm telling you guys is if you are doing this, this is the reason I don't buy. Like right now, if I bought, I would put 10 to 20% down. And I've got to look at if I took that 10 to 20%, objectively speaking, could I do better with that capital somewhere else right now? For me, the answer is yes. That's why it hasn't gone to a home. But a lot of people are like, well, I could get into a home for the same thing as my security deposit on my rent. So then they do, but they don't realize there was $10,000 of closing costs tied in on the loan and all of this other stuff, maintenance and repairs. And when they sell it, there's realtor commissions on the back end. And so little money down equals a lot of money later. And a lot of times, very little money down, if I really simplify that, that's a nice way of saying I'm broke. Okay, wealthy people, they don't do no money down. They don't do little money down. Okay, they put down whatever they want to put down to make it the right financial decision. They don't shop on a budget. So if I'm shopping and looking for 3% down or 0% down loans, that's code for I'm broke. If I'm broke, I shouldn't be doing this because I'm in a potential liability. What if something breaks? right? We just had, what did Dustin just say? He had someone literally like a buddy has just bought a home, roof, water heater, like literally 20 grand in repairs within the first 6 months of owning. Okay, because it's no different. Who here has traded a car and they knew was about to break? Like you knew, and like Lexi and I have done it. The dealer, like for some reason, they didn't catch it during the inspection, and we're like, we just screwed the hell out of that dealership. People do that with their homes too. Why do you think they're moving? They know stuff's about to break. They know that they haven't been maintaining the furnace and the water heater and all of the appliances, right? So they try and get out so they don't have to deal with it, and now it's your responsibility because you just bought it. So if I have very little down, meaning I'm broke, what happens when I have a $20,000 repair? If I have very little down, I probably also don't have very much equity. So probably that money is going to go on credit cards. That's what's going to end up happening. And then lastly, the myth is that I should pay my home off if I buy one. This one's a huge myth, big mistake. We're going to go over this a little bit tonight, but I'm going to cover it more next week just to go through like the right way to be doing this, right? But these are myths. So anytime I hear these, I'm immediately, if I'm a consumer and I'm hearing someone say these things, immediately I should be thinking, all right, they make money on this transaction somehow. Always buy a home, probably a real estate agent. The dude wants to make a 6% commission or a 3% commission or whatever his buyer's fee is, right? Never buy a home. The dude sells apartments. He wants rent, okay? A home is an investment. That's probably also a realtor. That's probably also someone that makes money on it. Renting is throwing money away. Like these are all memes that I can think when I look at my Facebook timeline. All real estate people, all of them, right? So, and it doesn't mean they're bad people. They're salespeople. They sell a product. That product is a house, no different than a car or a life insurance or you know, an iPad. I have to look at for myself, is it the right decision? They're just doing their job, which is marketing their product. Good on them. But for me to let my guard down and be like, oh, she goes to my church, I should listen because she said something on Facebook, I'm going to go buy it. That's not a good idea, right? So we're going to lose some friends here, Mike. So I'm looking at, these are some of the myths I'm looking at. So this is, when should I buy a home? Correct thinking and incorrect thinking. Okay, so correct thinking about this would be that I cannot include a home on my net worth, so it's not an asset. So I'm not trying to justify why it is one. Okay. Incorrect thinking would be buying a home because I can tell myself it's an asset. Right. But what if it, even if it was, let's go ahead and leave that off the table. Even if it was, would I buy an asset that I couldn't afford? I wouldn't. Would I buy an asset that had more liability than it had gain for me right now? I wouldn't. Right. So I shouldn't even, like, the asset thing we can almost ignore. I should make the decision based on, is it the good idea to do? Okay, not is it an asset or not. It's not an asset. So we can go ahead and say, no, that's not true. But if you guys are catching what I'm saying, it's not even about that. It's about, is it the right move for me right now? The other one is that if I rent, I'm throwing my money away to my landlord. That's the incorrect way to think about it. Okay, I rent right now. I'm not like in pain because my landlord, Tom, gets $1,800 every month. I'm not like, oh, that money got thrown away. Like, I don't do that when I eat out. I'm not like, oh, I just had to pay Panda Express. Like, it's what I'm paying for. I'm paying for housing. I'm paying for food. I'm okay with that. Okay. If I am in a rental situation, if I'm in an owner situation, it's the same thing. Have you looked at your AM statement? If I look at my mortgage statement, the bank makes interest almost always on all of my payments for like what, the first half of the loan almost, and then it starts to convert over. So either way, my point is either way, it's a housing cost. Just look at it as a housing cost. Don't justify like who it went to and whether you like them better. Like my landlord, Tom's a pretty cool guy. I don't mind paying him $1,800 a month. He's an older dude. That's probably part of his retirement. I can actually like be happy to do that for him, right? Because I'm helping the guy out. The other myth is like, if I go through this, right, the home, it's not an asset. Okay, renting is not throwing money away. And this is the conclusion I jumped to for a while till I saw some of what I'm going to show you guys tonight. My conclusion was good. Never buy one. Okay. If it's not an asset and it's not throwing money away, why would I ever buy a home? It's a bad idea. Never buy one. Okay. But that's also not, that's an absolute, that's not necessarily true. So I should buy when it lowers my housing cost, when it lowers my housing cost and I can use my equity. Okay. So if I was renting, and I'm going to again go through my numbers, if I was renting for $1,800 a month and I do something where I can own, and now I'm only spending $1,600 per month, and I can access my equity, why wouldn't I do that? That's a good idea. Like that actually financially makes sense to me. The other one is that I need to get interest rates, lowest rate, right? Jeremy and I talk about this all the time. People go to freaking Costco where they buy their muffins and car tires to get a mortgage just over a rate, right? So could you guys imagine that if you came in to buy life insurance for me and I was like, hey, I want some muffins, I'll sell them to you. Okay. It's not about the lowest rate. It's about what did I pay in interest? There's a difference. There's a big difference that, and I learned this early on, like with finances, my gross rate and my effective rate. What was my rate versus what did I actually pay in interest? Right? Just easy math. $10,000 loan, 5% interest. My rate's 5%. Right? Let's say though that I pay the loan off halfway. My rate's 5%, but I didn't pay 5%. I paid 2.5% because I paid my loan off halfway. Does that make sense? That's effective versus gross. So I'm not worried about my rate. I'm worried about what am I actually paying. The rate almost doesn't matter, right? The rate, like the bank can structure that rate any way they want to make it work in their favor. There's so many different amortization schedules and ways that I can put loans together. It's about what did I actually pay in interest. Okay, and that's a big deal. Like that's a difference maker for a lot of us. Like when I learned that, that's when I started really becoming smart with money, because I was like, okay, the rate's this, but what I'm actually paying. Okay, what if I could deduct some of this? Now I'm paying even less. What if I can pay some of this down and then go use it for something else? Or what if I'm not paying any of it because I borrowed all of my equity and I invested it into a deal that pays my mortgage for me? Now none of this matters because I'm not paying anything. My cash flow takes care of it. It's not even coming out of my budget, right? So some of this is like different thinking we've got to have. The other wrong way of thinking is that home ownership is the American dream. Okay, it's not. Financial freedom is the American dream. And it doesn't mean that these things are exclusive. But what I'm telling you is that if I do this wrong, it will cost me this 100% of the time. Okay, if I do this right, I can still have this. They don't have to be mutually exclusive, but if I do it the wrong way, they do become mutually exclusive. Can't tell you, when I sit down, this is like classic Anchorage. Sit down, look at a financial statement, all of the net worth would be in the house. Only we can't count the house. I had some pissed off realtors that are like, I'm not doing business with you ever again because you told me my home's not part of my net worth. It's the truth. Versus if I focus on net worth first and I focus on passive income first, and then I use that to get into the home later, like there's some dope ways to own homes. I'm gonna go and blow your minds real quick. Anyone know what a land trust is? Also known as a conservation easement. I can literally buy like a farmland, gigantic piece of property. I can put a mansion on that farmland, live in the mansion, and the farmland that I don't plan on building on, I can donate to a trust that I own. I'm in charge of the trust. I just donated like, let's say $700,000 or $800,000 worth of land to that trust. Then I can write that off on my taxes. Why wouldn't I do that? That's wealth building. I've just lowered my taxes by $800,000, and I'm allowed to do that over the next 15 years. Insane. But if I'm looking at like, I just bought, the really nice house on South Side for $700,000, and I don't have anything in savings now, but we have the house and the white picket fence and we're part of the group, like that costed me this. Now I'll never be able to do the mansion thing, right? And then finally, I should finance my dream home. You should use your home to finance your dream life. That's what this is about. This is about wealth, not about home ownership. So, and it's kind of like taking a little segment of something that I'm not going to say doesn't matter, but I'm going to say it's fairly inconsequential. It would be like, who's ever seen those life insurance agents where they're like, you need life insurance. And they're not talking about the sacred account. They just over value the life insurance. They don't talk about like you need passive income. They're like, what if you die? Like they over focus on like a very inconsequential part of wealth. That's what home ownership is. If you focus just on that, it's kind of like you need life insurance, but you don't have retirement. You don't have passive income. I don't have any of those things, but I'm being told how important this is. Get that done first and then go take care of this afterwards. That's what I'm saying. So why should I own a home? Let's break this down. The number one reason is because it reduces my living expenses. Okay, if you're watching this and you've heard a realtor ever say, renting is too expensive, you should buy a home instead. Tell them to put their money where their mouth is. I would buy if it lowers my housing expenses. Okay, the problem is my housing expenses are not just principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, right? It's not just my mortgage payment. So it's got to actually reduce my total housing expense: principal, interest, taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, repairs, and improvements. That would be a long ass acronym, right? But it's got to reduce all of that stuff. Otherwise, it's not actually cheaper for me. It's more expensive, right? So I have to look at that. And then also the secondary reason is that it increases my tax benefits. I can write off more of my home. I can use more of my home for business. I can do different stuff by owning versus renting. It's a lot harder to justify some of this if I'm renting it. If I own it, it's a little bit different, right? So that's the second reason. And then the third reason is because I can use my equity to borrow against and build wealth. I would actively be using my equity to borrow and build wealth with. If I owned a home, that would be the number one reason. It lowers my costs. I can write off more of it for my business, and I can actively use my equity to go build wealth. Right? So these are the three reasons why I would buy a home. Now I want you to think, how many people do you actually see that are doing that as the primary reason? For me, when I look around, it's not very many. I know a couple, but not a ton. Right? But where would we be at today if that was the primary reason? Free up cash flow, reduce taxes, and then use equity to build wealth. Now, why shouldn't I buy a home? I should not buy a home if it's going to increase my housing costs. Right? I don't get rich off housing costs. I don't get rich off giving more money to a landlord or a bank. Like, it's not even about renting or owning. It's about more money just left my pocket and went to someone else now. And it's not earning me interest, and it's not building me cash flow. It's now gone. Right? So that would be a bad reason to buy. If it increases my costs, I probably shouldn't do it. I should not buy if I don't have a big enough down payment. If I'm looking at FHA loans and VA loans and like little money down loans, that probably automatically means I shouldn't do it. Like, I'm already in the club of people that has no business spending that money right now, because I probably don't have anything to cover myself if I have an emergency come up. I probably don't have anything invested. I probably have debt right now that costs me money that if I were to get rid of, I would have more cash freed up to make the right decision later. That's almost an automatic disqualifier for me. I shouldn't buy if my down payment will yield me a higher rate of return elsewhere. Let's say I'm going to take, 5-10 grand and stick that into a house. Could I put that towards debt? And that debt maybe is costing me 12% interest. And if I put it there instead, I'm earning 12% by not paying it in interest anymore. In that case, I probably need to make that decision and continue renting or continue living in the smaller house, because that's where I'm at right now. And then finally, I probably shouldn't do it just because my realtor, mortgage lender, homeowner, friends, title guy all say it's a good idea. Right? Some of them will do a good job for you. Jeremy will do a good job for you, right? Like, but you want someone that's actually going to honestly look at you and be like, hey, that's probably too much. Or does this actually make sense for you? So if you have someone that's out there skipping around, like, I'm a realtor, like, come to my thing, or a mortgage guy in your BNI group, like, interest rates are cheap right now. Like, that's not really the reason why you should buy a house. And I want you to realize, all of my friends, if they're saying I should buy a house, they're really just socially justifying why they did it. Again, I've got to look at, are my friends wealthy? If they're not, and this is going to sound really mean, but if my friends are not, I pretty much can do the opposite of everything they do, and I would be wealthy. That's part of what I did. I looked at my friends and family. At the time, I was not doing well financially. I realized they weren't doing well financially either. And I was like, cool. So the plan is, whatever they do, I'm going to do it backwards. And it worked out pretty well. I don't have a house. I lease my vehicles. Like, all of the things you shouldn't do, I did. And I didn't do any of the things you should do. And it turned out really well for me. So again, why shouldn't I buy a home that's going to increase my costs? I don't have enough for down payment. There's maybe a better yield on my down payment somewhere else. And I'm just doing it because everyone says I should. How do I know if I can afford a home? This is big. All right. So the way that I know I can afford a home is if my monthly housing costs are lower with the home than they are while I'm renting. So if I'm renting right now and I were to buy a house, I would know it was the right decision because my total monthly housing costs dropped. Okay. And that would mean principal, meaning the loan payback, any money that I'm paying back on an amortized mortgage on a loan. Now, I want you to realize, with a loan payment, the principal that's on that PITI calculation is not, it's not voluntary. I have to pay that back, right? So the principal is huge. I've got to count that. Interest is the other one. Are we down on one of the cameras?
Just the video.
Video's down. Audio's still up? Are we still on Facebook?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Bear with us, guys. We're going to get this straightened out. So interest is the other one. I've got my interest that I'm paying. Obviously, we know that one. I've got taxes. Okay. I was looking. Taxes around the country are like $2,000. Do we pay double taxes if we live in Alaska? Is it state and muni?
Talking about property?
Yeah.
No.
Just state. Okay. So it seems like the city taxes here are really high compared to maybe other cities.
Most part, yeah.
Okay.
They are a little higher than
Kind of higher than average. So that's another one that's like most of us don't look at because I just see my escrow and I don't really look at what are my taxes. So I've got to look at that as an expense, my total mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and also the insurance. This would be mortgage insurance, like private mortgage insurance, and it would be homeowners insurance. Any insurances I'm paying for, I have to count that in my housing costs, right? And then I've also got to look at maintenance. What am I going to spend on maintenance? What am I going to spend on improvements? And I know you think improvements are voluntary, but it's a housing expense. I was not spending that money when I was renting. I wasn't putting $5,000 into the bathroom when I was renting. So if I'm going to move into a house and all of a sudden there's going to be a $5,000 annual expense for bathroom maintenance or the new kitchen, that is a housing cost. That does now go into my housing costs. And then finally is utilities. Okay, utilities, gas, electric, water, trash, landscaping, anything I'm spending money on to maintain and make the house look nice or make it work and run, right? These are all housing costs. Now, I want you to really realize when I'm looking at a home, the mortgage guy is going to talk to me about principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That's about it. The realtor is not probably talking to me about much of anything here. And then nobody's really talking to me about anything down here. With the average American, they will spend about as much here as they will on their mortgage payment. So I have to realize it's probably double. Like whatever I think it's going to cost, it's probably going to be double by the time I factor in repairs, maintenance, improvements, utilities, all of that stuff. All right. So that's how I would know if I can afford it. I would total all of those things up and I would compare it against my total housing cost for rent. So if I'm renting, I've got my rent payment. Okay. What do we cover? Electric and water?
And heat.
Heat, electric, water, utilities, right? And then rental insurance. I would add all of that up and I would just add and figure out which one's actually cheaper. Okay. And based on that, that's what I'm going to select and that's what I'm going to do. So let's look at the math on that. So let's say a $300,000 house that I purchased on a 30-year loan at 3.5%. Okay. Principal and interest, just what I'm paying on principal and interest. This is the average, $1,389.35 per month, right? Insurance, I totaled that at about $87 a month. Okay. Taxes, and I didn't go off Anchorage with this. I went off national average. Taxes, I said $177 a month going towards taxes. Okay. Anchorage is way higher than that, right? If you're twice as high as that is what Jeremy's saying. So that's another one to look at. Depending on my city, taxes again are different. Utilities, about $167 a month. Here's the one that nobody sees. The average American spends $413 per month on maintenance and repairs. Think about that. Okay, that's basically a third of my mortgage payment just on maintenance and repairs. Okay, and that's not, no one's showing that to me on the loan statement. When I buy a house, no one is saying, hey, you need to be putting an extra $500 a month in there just in case. Right? If they did, if that was part of my mortgage payment, imagine if that automatically drafted out with my mortgage payment, I probably wouldn't buy the house. I would be terrified. Okay, but I want you to think, those of you that are homeowners, what does happen when that breaks? You're terrified anyways, and it probably goes on a credit card or a second position line of credit on your home or something terrible for you that's not a good financial decision simply because we didn't have the foresight to actually mesh it in there with our payments. Okay, it's kind of like Christmas. Like, you know, people forget somehow that there's Christmas this year. And then at last minute, they're like, crap. And they're like, you know, like December 24th, like pushing the doors down at the mall, trying to figure out their presents. Like, you knew, right? But for some reason, we didn't plan ahead. I'm telling you, this is actually substantial. That's about $5,000 a year. So my total monthly cost to own this home would be about $2,234 a month. That's what I would spend if I was going to own this home. A lot of people like 300,000. We said that's about average for Alaska, right, Jeremy? 300K or so.
For the Anchorage area. Yeah.
For the Anchorage area. That's a normal house. Most people probably have somewhere around that range. That's a median home value. That means that they are spending total about $2,234 a month for housing. I can rent a nice place for $2,200 a month, right? And I don't have to worry about anything breaking. I don't have to fix it. When the earthquake happens, I'm not responsible for it. I'm not mowing the lawn. I'm not doing any of that stuff, right? Versus if I'm renting, right now I'm renting, what do we have? 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, and it's like $1,800 a month total. That's all of our housing, including our utilities, right? I don't fix anything. I'm not out there with the snow plow. I don't mow the lawn, like none of that stuff that I take care of. And I'm saving $600 a month compared to if I went and bought that place. Big difference. Now, how should I do it? So again, my monthly cost should be lower. This is what I want to stress. If I am going to buy a home, my monthly cost should be lower than they are now. These are actually my numbers, guys. So this is Jerry's numbers. I spend $1,800 a month on housing. Okay, like I said, 3 bedroom, 1 bath house. We have a yard. Okay, if I were to buy my house, it would need to cost less than $1,800 a month for it to make sense, right? So that would be how I would do it. I would look at, here's my nut. I need to spend less than that. By how much, right? How much do I spend less? Well, that all depends on what's the rate of return I want to have on my down payment. I'm not going to put money somewhere if I probably don't make around 12% or more. That's really like where I'm at in my business and my investments. I could deploy that capital elsewhere and it would probably make about 12%. So if I'm going to buy, I need to be able to free up about 12% on my housing costs for that to really do enough for me to make that transaction. So here's how I would do this. Right now for me, if I were to buy just on average numbers, I already know that I would spend about $177 on taxes. I already know that I would spend about $167 on utilities. Again, these are national averages. I already know my maintenance and repairs would be $413. And I already know that my insurance would be about $58 on I'm looking at around $200,000 home range. Okay, so that means that I'm already spending $815.58 a month before I've taken the mortgage into consideration. So if I'm trying to spend less than $1,800, I'm trying to spend 12% less than $1,800, I need to look at that math too. So just off the top, $1,800 minus $815, that means I have $984 left, right? But I'm trying to lower my payment by 12%. So that means that I can really only spend an additional $768 per month on mortgage payment, right? So between this and that would save me 12% on my housing. I would be spending 12% less than the $1,800 I spend per month right now. You guys tracking with that? Okay, so just simple math here. If we go to the next page, what I would do on this, I would purchase on a first lien HELOC. I wouldn't do a traditional mortgage. I would do a first lien HELOC. Okay, I would have an interest rate around 4.5%. That means that I can spend $768 per month on that payment. And based on that math, I would be able to afford a home around a $200,000 price range after closing costs. And that's going to be the same money, right? So I would need to have $20,000 down to do that. I need about 10% to go purchase that. And if I want to avoid the PMI, I need to have 20% to go purchase that. So I need somewhere between 20 and 40,000, right? So if I do that on 10%, my housing cost would drop from my $1,800 a month down to my $1,584. Okay, meaning that I'm now saving $216 per month on housing. If I add that up and then I divide my down payment by that number, then I'm earning 12.9% on my down payment. That's my yield effectively. So I'm making money by buying the home because it's freeing up my housing cost. Okay, I want to make sure we caught this. So the HELOC is not a normal mortgage, interest only. Okay, any equity I have, I can freely pull against it. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this instead of a normal mortgage. I want to be able to actually use that equity to go build stuff, go build wealth, go invest, go do my business stuff, whatever I would like to do with it, right? So I'm looking at that as almost my own bank, my own credit line. And then I'm looking at that as my purchase price. Okay, so in Anchorage, what is like 200,000 going to buy me?
Zero lot line.
Zero lot line. So probably a condo, right? Condo, townhome, right? So I'm not living in Southside. I'm living in a condo. Okay. But the point is that I'm not doing this to have the house. I'm doing this for wealth. I'll have the dream house later. I would be willing to give up like the dream house to be, all right, I live in a condo. I do have it on a mortgage. It's cheaper than renting. I'm saving money every month. My down payment is actually yielding me something. And because I have the HELOC, I can pay that thing down and borrow against it. Right now, the great thing with this, and I don't want to get too complex, but the mortgage payment literally is interest only. That means my taxes, my insurance, my utilities, all that other stuff I calculated, I can pretty much pay that down my mortgage balance every month until I'm ready to spend it. And that would actually lower my interest payment. Super, super good way to go about this. Okay, so that would be the right way to do this. Now, if I was doing this, the first thing I would need to do is actually do my blueprint. This is very different than run my credit, see if I can qualify. This is sit down, look at my numbers, find out what my goals are, find out what I'm spending now, add all of those costs up. So I know for a fact what I could spend if I were to buy a house right now. Okay, I was talking to some clients in Georgia. They have a money set aside and they're like, we're thinking about buying. And so I went through this math with them. And on theirs, housing is a little bit different. They would only be able to afford about 70 grand right now. So on 70 grand, it's because their rent's so cheap. In Alaska, rent's really expensive. I'm paying 1,800. They're probably paying 1,000, right? So for them right now, renting makes more sense because a $70,000 home is like living in a trailer. So it's like, do we rent a nice apartment or do we live in a trailer right now, right? So knowing my numbers would actually help me figure all that stuff out. So I need to know how much I'm spending on my housing now, and I have my blueprint done. Next, I need to do that math. I need to add up what am I spending, and then if I were to buy, what's the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, utilities, improvements on that home purchase, and what does that actually come out to, right? Now, once I know that number, I would need to have a target. I need to have my down payment target. This is how much I'm going to put down on the home, right? And I need to make sure that I still have savings. Okay, I still have money just in case. All of that stuff is still in play. And then in addition to that, I'm looking at my down payment. Now, the good news is, and you guys are going to think this is crazy that I'm saying that, if I do have that all figured out, if the numbers make sense, the home could be my first asset. It could be the first thing I do. I don't need to do 50 grand into a deal. I could stick it into a home that I know is going to lower my housing cost by 12%. I just made 12%. You guys see that? So that could be a $20,000 deal. And I would still, by the way, I would still do this with my Sacred account. I would be sticking aside in my Sacred account so I can do my down payment from that and still be earning interest on that down payment while I've now accumulated that into the home. And then I can pay myself back as I'm doing that entire transaction and cycle with the cash flow I've freed up now. Like, that would be the right way to go about this. So once I have the down payment, then I get pre-qualified. We do something called an all-in-one loan. That's the HELOC I mentioned, right? We do it. Are we the only ones in Alaska right now? We're the only ones in Alaska right now. Okay. So you can come talk to us. That's what we'll do for you. We'll sit you down, pre-qualify you. You'll work with our loan officer that we've partnered with. He knows all about this stuff. He's going to help you do it the right way. Okay. Now, this is important because the way that I structure that loan is going to dictate if this actually works for me. A lot of HELOCs are going to be a 10 or 15 year loan, and then I owe them a balloon payment at the end. Okay, I don't want to purchase my primary residence and then have to pay a balloon payment on the back end because I don't actually probably have that money saved. And again, that means that the 15-year marker, I would essentially be trying to pay my home off. That's not a good wealth move. Okay, this is unique because it's a 30-year period. I don't ever have to bring a balloon payment to the table. So I can do this math and I can get it done the correct way. And then the home mortgage, the HELOC, it takes care of itself. I don't have to like sacrifice my nest egg of wealth that I've set aside for investing to then throw at a house because I have a balloon payment that came up, right? So that's how I would go about this. Once I have the pre-qualification, I would then go look at properties that fit my numbers. I wouldn't work with just any realtor on this, okay? I would work with someone that will respect my numbers. They're not going to show me crap that's outside of what I'm looking for, okay? They have a history of working with a buyer and then not immediately having that buyer turn into a seller. I don't know if you catch what I'm saying there. If I'm a realtor and I worked with the buyer and in 6 months that buyer is now a seller, that means I ripped off that buyer. Okay, I wouldn't be working with those people. I would be working with people when they have a buyer, that buyer doesn't talk to them again for 7 to 10 years on that property, right? So that's the way I'm looking at it. And then a bonus, this is what we'll cover next week. I would use my HELOC now as my own personal bank. Okay, with the HELOC, it works just like a Sacred account. I can pay it down. I can pull against it. I can take money that I would save every month and put that into my credit line instead and use that to finance purchases. I can do all of the same types of things with it. So now I have that and I have my Sacred account. Like, I'm making money on my money in both ways. There's no reason for me to put money anywhere else right now. I'm just going to continue stacking it. So this is how I would go about it. And again, it's just a simple math equation. It's not emotional. It's not like these really cool sounding marketing phrases. It's what's my math? What are my numbers? Does this make sense to me? Okay. So guys, I'm going to wrap up here for tonight. I do want to leave this open for any questions we have in the room, any questions we have online, comments, that type of thing. So
A while back when you and I first started chatting and stuff, I thought you threw out a number for housing being a certain percentage of your total income.
25%. Yeah. So that's another factor Jeremy's bringing up. We typically recommend that you spend less than 25% of your total gross income on housing. So that's another matrix that you need to be looking at. So if I'm making $10,000 a month, that means my total housing cost is $2,500. That would mean that on the $300,000 home, I would need to be making about 10 grand a month. Okay, I know a lot of people that have the $300,000 home, to Jeremy's point, that are not making 10 grand a month. They're house poor, right? So super good point to bring up. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Nothing online. It's just silent, huh?
I think Virgil made a comment about the HELOC cap.
HELOC has a cap of over 10%.
But I'm not sure.
But that's
What does he mean by that?
I don't know. I think it's just more of a statement.
Does he mean a second position?
HELOC has a cap of over 10%.
So a HELOC, I don't know what the cap would mean on that, Virgil. A HELOC, you can do typically up to 90% loan to value ratio. So if I had $100,000 worth of home, I could get $90,000 HELOC. All I've got to do is have 10% that I put down at purchase. So that's the only real cap that I can think of.
We want a reserve, but it's
Savings.
That 10% might be the cap that he's referring to.
Yeah, I would need to have reserves, but I should have reserves before I go buy a house anyways. So I'm not sure what that is. Any other questions? Awesome. So guys, thank you for tuning in. Next week, I will be talking about how to use the HELOC. How do we use that to actually build wealth on the transaction? The question would be, should I pay off my mortgage? So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you next week.